Welcome back, everyone, to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. And our guest is Jon-Paul, or JP Gabriele, and he is the founder of Crisis City. He teaches people how to prepare for crises, for emergencies. And we talked about fire and floods and earthquakes and in corporate there could be, PR disasters. There could be all kinds of things that happen in a corporation. And so the question I have for you now, JP, is over these 15 years of standing next to leaders on their hardest days, wow. What have you learned about people and about human nature under pressure that you did not know when you started? And Raj brought this up at the pause there around mindset, like, so tell us what you've learned. And yeah, let's start with that.
I think the biggest thing that I learned is to have a bit more empathy for those people that are at that level. So when the people who are responding to a crisis, particularly if we put it in a business context,
Mm,
the very senior people who hold the power. And I
yeah.
think the natural reaction is you think they have everything together, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're almost like robotic in the way that they would respond. And
Mm,
you kind of went into the private sector with that mindset. And then the more and more I worked with these people, you realize they're human at the end of the day and they will make mistakes, that
yeah.
they are struggling and panicking just as much as everybody else in these kind of
Yeah.
situations. Sometimes even more so. And
Mm,
the reason for that is they're the one that has to hold the decision to whatever path they go down for the response.
mm,
So it's a lot of pressure for an individual or a group of individuals to have that responsibility for a company, for a country, for a region, to be able to whatever decision I'm making here is going to impact
mm.
sometimes tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions when you're looking at leaders of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed since I stood next to them is they are human, and I think sometimes they need to be able to understand that even on their worst day, they can make a
Mm,
mistake. What
mm,
people are more accepting of is if they own that mistake and they show empathy and
yeah.
they own up to that. Where people are less inclined to accept it and be more tolerant is if they try and paper over it or like kind of talk their way
Mm,
out of something or pass the blame. It's not us, it's not us. People don't like that. People can see through
mm. Yes.
disingenuous.
Yeah.
So that's when I do the training with these people and the companies. The thing I lead with is you can make mistakes as long as you can say we followed the process. And the
Mm,
biggest thing is they have to make decisions a lot of the time with incomplete information. It's
mm,
never
mm.
perfect. If it was perfect, it wouldn't
Yeah.
be a crisis.
Mm,
So you made the decision with the information that you had at the time. If it turns out to be the wrong decision in the long run, own it, show
mm.
some empathy, be apologetic, and then people start to be a bit more understanding.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, what have you had to unlearn to become good at this? What did you think leadership was when you started that turned out to be wrong? So, what have you unlearned here? I think that's a very good question.
Hmm. Ego is one of the bigger things.
Ah, yes, yes.
That was and I was guilty of it myself. You go and think I know all of this, or we they might. I found a lot of times companies would say, well, we went through X, Y, and Z in the past, and we've got through it fine. So why do we need to do this crisis exercise? Why do we need to have your training?
Ah,
That's a lot of the
yeah.
pushback I get. It's like, well,
Mm,
and a lot of the time I'm going back a bit now, but we managed COVID and we were fine, and yeah, we
mm,
adapted and we did it on the fly. So oh,
mm,
that's fine. I understand that, but sometimes you've got to drop your ego, and I think that's really something that I had to unlearn myself, and what a lot of people in that position need to learn. And particularly, again, it's a case of it's when you're making these big decisions. Sometimes it's not always the top leader that has the final call. They're not always the right person.
mm,
So
mhm,
again, drop your ego. Sometimes
mm.
somebody, the quiet person in the room, might have the answer. So don't
Ah, yes,
dominate. Listen to
yeah.
everybody's perspective and then you make it like a more just like defined
Mm-hmm.
decision.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the thing I would say is yeah, that I had to unlearn myself with ego.
And you know what happens with that is I feel that when a leader acknowledges that she doesn't have all the answers, a lot of pressure is taken off of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can imagine if there's a stock market crisis or something, and they have to deal with that, and their board of directors is yelling at them, and what are you doing, and la la la, and yeah, I mean that's reality.
Yeah.
So they
And
they have to learn. Go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt you. And I think sometimes as well, just because you are the senior person, that doesn't mean you're the right person for the crisis as well. Sometimes they need
Oh,
to get out of their own
wow.
way. Yeah, it's more like sometimes you have like what we call like a gold, silver, bronze approach. So the bronze are like the like people like on the ground doing the recovery aspects. Your
Hmm.
silver sometimes is like your crisis management team who like run the response, and then your gold level sits above it and has like to make big budget decisions and deal with the press and be that face, but aren't actually responding to the crisis and making those operational decisions, strategic decisions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a difficult thing for some people to kind of relinquish that control. Because like, I'm a senior leader here. I need to be the one that's in the room making the decisions. And sometimes you
Yeah,
have to say,
yeah,
the best thing you can do is step back. Let this team who are
yeah.
trained and who are responsible make those decisions.
Mhm.
They'll bring you in when they need to. They'll come to you when your decisions are required. But stop butting in. Stop trying to take control. And that's where again that comes back to that ego is that like, do they have the self-awareness to say, I understand that my best place is not in the room. I need to step back a bit and let them do their job.
Wow. So that is so interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me that within these large corporations or even medium size, that there is a crisis management team. That
Yeah.
is their job. They train in it, then they get updated annually, I'm sure, or whatever it is, and they are the ones who will respond to any kind of crisis and will update the president or whomever.
Yep.
Yeah, that is fabulous. I never thought of that. I think it's a great idea. So,
Yeah.
um, next question for you, JP, is clearly you spend a lot of time working with people who are either in crises or they're preparing for crises. How do you stay grounded? What has this work taught you about your own resilience?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, I think for one, I have a fantastic family and support system behind me,
Mm,
and then
mm,
that really helps because the nature of the job I do, I'm constantly having to think of the worst case situation all the time. So
mm,
my mind is constantly going like, well, what if this happens and what if this happens?
mm.
So to be able to ground myself back into family life is very important, so I
Yeah,
can kind of
yeah.
switch off from that.
Mm,
But yeah, I think it's that, but it's also I never want to stop learning, and I think that really helps because then
mm,
you're constantly thinking, okay, well, how can I get that 1% better every time and become a better person, but and better at my job? Because the way the world is going now, this isn't going away, unfortunately. It's only going to get more and more.
yes,
And
yeah,
I
it is.
find that the more I can educate myself and build my internal resilience, the better I'm going to be able to
Mm,
manage any stresses that I come across.
mm,
Because sometimes it's a case of me reminding myself, take my own advice and say, okay, well, what would I take a step out myself? What would, if I was next to me advising, what would I tell myself? And that really
ah,
is a good pattern to get in. Is like remove
mm,
yourself from your body for a second and say,
mm.
right, how would I advise myself? So there's two ways that I do that, and it's like that self advice and the support system that I've got.
That's lovely. One of the things that as a as a healer coach I will recommend to people is to spend a lot of time in nature when they have a
Mm.
moment.
Yeah,
Go for a walk in the woods, sit down under a tree, put your talk to the trees, you know, and if you have a lawn, walk on the lawn barefooted, put your feet in some dirt.
Mm,
Otherwise, you get lost up here when we really need to be grounded.
absolutely. Yeah. It's actually where
So,
some of my best ideas come from walking my dog and just getting out in the fresh air and just experiencing things. That's where if there's something troubling me or I need to think through a problem,
yeah.
that resolves it for me. So yeah, I completely agree.
You're just, I have a client right now, and she's just a youngster. She's only 11, and she's going through a crisis with her cat. And the cat's gone missing
Um,
with its four kittens. So she's really distraught. And an animal communicator told us that the cat ran away because uh, the mother was sterilized way too soon after she gave birth, and so her body is traumatized. It's got infection and all that stuff, right? So it just made me think how useful crisis management, disaster management would be to teach our students in school,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know, just
absolutely.
yep,
It's so
yep,
important.
yeah,
And it's always you don't really need to focus on an event. You don't have to because sometimes, particularly if you go into schools, like if you start talking around wildfires and earthquakes, very important, but it has to
yes,
be handled with care. But
yeah,
it's the principles of resilience is just the same as if I would teach a senior executive than if I would
mm-hmm.
teach a child. And it's all
Yeah,
about that being
yeah,
able to bounce back and to be able to take a breath and then assess the situation of what's going on. So there's
mm-hmm.
a lot of similarities of
Mm-hmm.
how you can teach the general population from right the way from school
Yeah,
children up to the elderly
mm-hmm.
exactly in crisis management. You just don't have to
Mm-hmm.
kind of code it with, oh, well, what if you had a cyber attack?
Yeah,
That has its place, but yeah, the
yeah, yeah.
principles are so important, particularly for children, I
Mm.
think, and it just has to be handled with care, obviously.
And there's so many basics on the home front, of course. Like, we made sure a couple years ago that we put an emergency kit together.
Mhm.
An emergency kit for a stay kit, just in case there's an earthquake and we can't get into town to buy groceries. And we also put together a go kit, so it's just a backpack with stuff that
Yes.
we might need if we have to rush off somewhere. And then we have generators, and we've got you know things set up, and uh, I don't know many people who do.
No, it seems to be like, again, it's like a personality type. It's like, well, we need to be prepared,
Yeah,
and I think that goes down to a bit more education needs to happen from
mm-hmm.
governments and local authorities to kind of
Yeah,
say, and they are getting better. But I
yeah,
think it does need
yeah,
to stream down, and I think sometimes it becomes a little bit of a stigma where I think it's like that kind of prepper mentality, and you think, oh, it's going to be a zombie attack or something, and it
yeah.
comes with a stigma. But absolutely
Mm-hmm.
not. Having a grab bag that you can that's got all your important things in. That if you need to go, you get that bag and you go. Knowing where your key documents are is really
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Yes.
other things is like how would you communicate with other family members if communications went down?
Yeah,
And I know we're
yeah.
talking in extremes, but just to have those conversations
Mm-hmm.
makes people feel a bit
Yeah,
more comfortable that they know, like
yeah.
you must feel comfortable now. Like, well, if I need to stay in,
Yep,
I have some resources. If I need to
yep,
leave, I have resources.
yep.
So it helps you feel that more, it builds that resilience. It helps you feel a bit more confident. Whereas if you didn't, you might still get by, but also you might, that panic will set in because like, well, oh, we need medication because we have a certain medication that we have to take every single day.
Yeah.
Where is it? Do you know what the prescription's called in case you have to leave the house and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have it? So they're the things that I would advise people think through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if people were so reliant on our phones now, do you have battery packs? You said you have a generator, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Never let I
And a
would never
battery
let
pack. We have both.
well, exact, perfect. If you and never let your battery like go too low, never let your fuel tank go too
Mm-hmm.
low in case you need to
Yeah,
go somewhere. All
yeah.
these little things, it's like it's that
Mm-hmm.
1% improvement. If you start to do that, your resilience as a person and a family will improve.
And what makes me feel good is that we're so well set up here that we could probably feed a few people in our
Mm,
community if they weren't prepared. So
yeah.
um
Well,
That makes
community
me
is a
feel
massive
good.
thing. Yeah, community is a massive
Yes.
thing. So, like, what you would do there,
Yeah.
you're doing a service to your community, which is very
Hmm.
commendable. But yeah, that's where
Yeah.
things you find that in a crisis, communities do tend to really pull together,
Yeah.
and it becomes like less about, well, I'm not sharing. No, everybody comes together. So yeah, community
Hmm.
is phenomenal.
So let me ask you. Let's go back to the fire because, as my friend said, Europe is on fire. If you were sitting beside um, President Macron of France, how would you direct him for everything that's going on? And his country is burning.
Mm. The main thing that I would advise is kind of communicate regularly with the
Mm.
population. Because
Ah,
the more you communicate and you kind of show that strength and calm people down, because the
right.
most thing will do it, unfortunately with it, especially with a wildfire, there isn't a lot you can do at the time. You have to evacuate, obviously,
Yes,
but
yes.
they're so difficult to get control of wildfires that the nature of the
Mm.
beast. So
Mm-hmm.
to constantly communicate regularly and set
Mm.
the times when you're going to communicate so people know when they can expect an update. Even if
Ah,
you haven't got much to update on, still
yes.
communicate. So they it becomes like I
Mm-hmm.
know at 6 p.m. I'm going to get a
Mm-hmm.
message from the president. He's going
Mm.
to tell us, so you know to be at your TV or at the radio for that specific time. So that's what I would advise is communication in these aspects is so vital because that's where
I
you can
wonder if
say,
he's,
okay, go ahead.
yeah. I wonder if he's doing that. I think that's really wise advice.
Yeah,
People are scared, right? People are scared.
absolutely, and rightly so.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
and
noticed
and
with
the
our prime minister. Sorry, go ahead, honey.
no,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I noticed during the pandemic that our prime minister, Trudeau, at the time, every day or several times a week, he was on the television in front of his home
Mm.
and giving updates, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And some of us
absolutely.
didn't agree with what he was saying, but he was reassuring
Yes.
people that hey, our government is doing something to help. Yeah,
That's exactly right. You're never going to be able to please everybody. There's always, especially
no,
when it comes to like governments,
yeah,
there's always going to be sides.
mm,
But if you
mm-hmm.
keep showing up and you keep being there and being as open, it goes back to the empathy, going back
Mm,
and being there, but keep showing up. That has its
right,
value because people then kind of build
mm,
trust whether whatever side they're on. Because like
mm-hmm.
I'm here and I'm kind of I'm doing as much
Yeah,
as I can. It's not like
yeah,
he can
yeah.
go and start fighting tackling the fire himself, but what he can do is try and unite everybody by with his messaging.
Would you say that's your greatest piece of wisdom?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I
Okay,
think communication
yeah,
without effective communication and without that empathy,
mm,
any crisis will
yeah.
escalate without that, regardless of what it is.
Well, John Paul, you are an incredible human being. Thank you for
Appreciate that.
being our guest here today. I tip my hat to you and to, as I said off air, that you have a name Gabrielle, which I believe is an archangel. So I'm going to guess that you have many angels and archangels working with you because what a job you have.
They
Wow,
do.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
They're my
Yes.
key
So
staff.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me. It's
for
been a
sharing.
pleasure.
Yeah. And let's have you back soon. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Love to.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
for now.
Pleasure. Thank you.